Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from Innova.Buzz, and I'm really excited today to welcome all the way from Bangalore in India, Laban Ditchburn, who's a speaker and author, a podcast host, a creator, the creator of the Podcast Heroes movement, and he's also known as the world's best courage coach. Now, don't be surprised if you don't hear an Indian accent, you'll hear an Australian / New Zealand, slight New Zealand accent, because that's where he's originally from. So welcome to the Innova.Buzz podcast, Laban. It's a great privilege to have you as my guest.
Jürgen Strauss, thank you from the bottom of my Indian adopted heart for having me on Innova.Buzz today. And as you were saying those beautiful words, it froze right before you delivered the world's best courage coach. And I was like, the world's best dramatic pause. So although the tech in this country is unbelievable, there is moments when if there's power outages, the internet might drop off. So fingers crossed we'll be good today. And if it does, my many apologies.
That's all right. We might just leave this in the recording because I think the technology that we're using actually records locally. So whilst sometimes it freezes, as long as we can keep understanding the conversation and keep the conversation flowing, it usually turns out all right. And just for full transparency for our listeners, I can't see that my video is recording because I just have a black screen, and this is the second episode this has happened. So I'm relying on Laban telling me, yes, you're on video, it's all good. And so I'm just looking at Laban and straight at the camera. So yes, the joys of technology, but isn't it wonderful that we can speak to one another all across the world, and you can basically travel the world and enjoy the wonderful surroundings of Bangalore and the wonderful culture of India, and still continue to do the work you do.
Yeah, I'll give that a big amen. I know, Jürgen, you and I have spoken offline, and you've spent time here, and it's captured your heart in its own little way. And for those that are listening that reside in North America, Canada, neck of the woods, because it's such a long way, there's not too many tourists. And out of 30 odd countries that I've visited, and I've lived in 6 now, it is by far and away my favorite place to visit. And we've been here 2.5 months, so I've had a good feel for it. And I would just say I highly recommend that you step outside of your comfort zone and find an opportunity to come and be captured by the spirit of this country and the people here. They are the most warm-hearted, kind, inquisitive, accommodating people. And one of the things that I find so fascinating, Jürgen, is that being invited into the homes of people here, there's something that I found out that really floored me, which explains the hospitality. And it's that when guests come into the home, it's that they bring God with them, with whatever their God is. So you are treated as such. And the hospitality is second to none. And I've been to some amazing countries with some hospitable people, but this is just another level. That's just my 2 cents, my 2 rupees.
Yeah, and then if you get taken out to some of their cultural festivals or dance performances, that's an amazing experience too. I've had the pleasure of that on several occasions.
Fantastic. Yeah. Highly recommend. Yeah. And you're still on camera, Jürgen, so you're doing well.
All right. Excellent. All right. Now, Chris Michelle, who was our guest on episode 521 of the Innova.Buzz podcast, introduced us and suggested that we have a conversation. So a big hello there to Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Another wonderful introduction, sir.
Yes. And now, as a speaker and coach and podcast host of the Become Your Own Superhero podcast, your passion is to effect positive change to those that are ready to be helped and are ready to take the first step in doing so. And you've also published a book earlier this year called Bet on You, Become Your Own Superhero, is kind of the subtitle or the sub-theme of that. So I'm really looking forward to exploring that some more with you today. But before we do that, and probably it's a good segue into that, what's the impact you're making in the world, Laban?
Well, I appreciate you asking me that question, Jürgen. It's a fun one to answer for me, and one that took quite a long time for me to figure out. My background, for those that haven't come across me yet, which will be pretty much everyone I would have thought, I grew up in New Zealand and I'm half Australian. So if you're confused by my accent, that's why. And spent half my life in both respective countries. And I grew up in New Zealand as a child of divorce. Mum and dad split up when I was 3.5, and nothing more innocuous than that. And for anyone that's gone through divorce, and when I share this story with the audience, with you guys, I want you to listen to it from your perspective about, you hear it about your own life, because there's lots of examples of stories that an adversity that people have gone through, and we don't want to take on any victim mindset. That's not what this is about. This is from a place of empowerment, I can assure you. But it's very easy to be numbed out, particularly when you're in the space that we're in, Jürgen, where you can hear lots of stories of adversity, and then all of a sudden it's easy to compare our own experience, and there will always be someone with a shittier experience than what you went through, right? But for my own experience, which I will not diminish at all, was being used as a bartering card between the fights between mum and dad. I got a number of siblings as well, which are involved, and there was leverage in foster homes and stuff. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you choose to look at it, I grew up adopting a system of core values and core beliefs and limiting beliefs and dysfunctional thinking that flowed forth into my adulthood and was the catalyst for a lot of destructive behavior, namely alcoholism, drug addiction, gambling addiction, philandering, negative self-talk, limiting beliefs, autoimmune disease, gamophobia, which is a fear of marriage and commitment, and a litany of other things that were destroying my life from the inside. And it was only when I got to 35 and sort of grounded along the floor of rock bottom highway and ground to a stop that I was like, I'm done. And I was at home back in Melbourne. I had about 3.5 bottles of very appropriately priced Pinot Noir coursing its way through my veins and smashing into my liver. And it was midnight on a Tuesday, and I was on my laptop gambling on a horse race in Hong Kong, not even watching it on TV, just F5ing, refreshing the page to see whether the bet had come in. For anyone who knows anything about gambling, that's real degenerate behavior and money that wasn't mine to lose, And there was a number in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and it was for the Gamblers Helpline. And without really any thinking at all, I just a nudge from the universe, I rang this number, and this woman picked up the phone, and I'll never know her last name, Jürgen, but let's just call it Magdalene, because her first name was Mary, and she was my guardian angel, whether she liked it or not. And she listened to me without judgment for the first time. And I think it's amazing if you can find someone that will listen to you in that time of need without trying to solve the problem for you, without trying to chop in and give you advice, but just to be there and just be present. And there's a great quote from a guy, Steve Hardison, who's known as the ultimate coach. He says, the power is in the listener. And being a powerful listener helps develop charisma for people that don't know. And we all want to be more charismatic. That woman put me in touch with the Salvation Army, which ran a program for problem gamblers, which was funded by the tax dollars from gambling losses. And for the first time in my betting career, I was actually up.
Yeah.
And I had a year and a half with this amazing woman, this poor woman who wore everything she took on her face. She was aged years beyond her biological age, but she also listened without judgment. And in that first session, Jürgen, she asked me a question about my mother, who I had a very dysfunctional relationship at the time. And I just broke down and opened up. And that started this healing journey of systematically knocking off initially the gambling, and then the drugs, and then the alcohol, and all the other dysfunctional behavior. And I'm very proud to share that in August of 2023, we're recording this in May 2023, celebrating 7 years without a single drop of alcohol, longer for the other stuff. And all without a 12-step program, and not at all diminishing that those are very integral parts that people can utilize to heal from this stuff. But I, out of necessity, was sort of forced to observe and recognize what I had gone through, and then started to learn about it, and then de-learn a lot of the dysfunctional stuff, and then relearn the functional behavior. And when you put enough effort into that to avoid pain, because my life was falling off a cliff. And one of the things that Mary, the gambling counselor, said, Laban, problem gamblers commit suicide at rates far higher than any other addictive behavior. And so little comments like that put the fear of God into me, and it started this journey. And to answer your question, the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing now is because when you overcome and are overcoming that kind of experience, for anyone that resonates with this, you'll know what I mean. If you haven't yet, then maybe this is the kicker for you. You have an obligation to share what you've learned with people that want help. And so my mission, Jürgen, is to be known as the world's most positively influential speaker. And you'll notice the key word in there as well, positively, because there's a lot of influential people in the world that aren't so positive. Yeah. And that's my specific alignment. That's what I feel like I've been called by the universe to complete. And I do that by adopting the world's best courage coach, which is a commitment that I've made to myself about how I choose to be and show up in the world. And every single morning I ask myself the question, how would the world's best courage coach conduct himself? And that sets me up for a tremendous amount of momentum, which has just absolutely blown my life apart in the most magnificent way possible. I want to caveat very quickly before I finish. My life is not without challenges. My life is not without many major mistakes. And my life is not without a challenge from the universe to stay true to what I've been doing. And I'm not perfect. I never will proclaim to be perfect, and neither should anybody else.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, congratulations on that achievement. I mean, we're kind of like 6 and month 5 out of 8, so nearly 7 years sober. That's as someone that hasn't had issues with alcoholism or drugs, it's hard to appreciate how difficult that is, but from all that I've read and studied, that must be a huge achievement and a huge thing to overcome.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Jürgen, and I God bless you for not having to go through that. I got off pretty lightly, and I know many other people who are dead as a result of their addictions. And what it came down to just quickly was a numbing out that I required to deal with the tether of tyranny that I was experiencing, because my life was shitty and it was just getting shittier. And I think that's the key lesson there. If you want your life to become less shitty, maybe you need to not be numbed out and confront some of these things face on, and then you can start dealing with them.
One of the things that struck me in reading, or I'll keep saying reading, but I actually listened to your book as an audio book, was even in early days when you were starting to fall into a pattern of behavior that essentially was seeking the attention that perhaps you weren't getting from your parents, in a way that those of us that had loving parents get and feel happy with, was that you always had this approach of being quite outrageous and not having any fear and chasing after what it was you wanted. Now, for a long time, up until perhaps 35, most of that was like I've got a note here saying you were a wild child, and most of that was destructive, as you've put it. But I think in some ways you've taken the positive side of that, being a little bit outrageous and not having fear and chasing after the dreams that you have. Was that a conscious decision, and how do you see that today?
You ever hear the example that from people that like win the lottery, and they win a huge one, like a few $100 million in the US, and they turn into absolute monsters, and they blow it all, and it magnifies who they are. My mum and dad, who I love and have forgiven years back, my mother is a redheaded. She is one of the most outrageous people you'll ever meet. And I inherited a lot of that personality trait from her. So even before I started the drink and the drugs, I was always doing things to put myself to be exposed. And then that became validation seeking behavior. So I would say that it's kind of like the money analogy. Like it magnified my personality. And now I don't do it for validation seeking. I do it because of the impact I want to have in the world. And it's just part of who I am. Like I love talking to people. I love doing things like this with you, Jürgen. I love an opportunity to create impact in the world. And 99% of all the stupid stuff that I used to do was when I was drunk and high. And when you eliminate that component, you do way less stupid stuff. I still do stupid stuff, but a lot of it pays off with its outrageousness and its brashness. And I think people that get it, that understand the blind courage that it takes to cold call these incredible people that have come on the show and have been able to joint venture with, once you do it long enough, it's like anything. It's like it becomes normalized to some extent. There's still a heart racing component. So I don't know if it answers your question specifically, but I would say it's an innate part of my being and my DNA.
Yeah. Well, what I'm curious about, I suppose, is a lot of people have ideas, and I know I've said this, I've seen something on TV or I've read about something, and here's this wonderful idea, this wonderful product that somebody's come up with, and it's hugely successful. And I say, well, I thought of that years ago. But the difference was that I might have thought of it years ago, but I didn't do anything about it. And so there are a lot of people like that, and I fall in that category from time to time, where our negative self-talk or something gets in the way of us saying, I believe in this idea, I'm going to go out and chase this dream. I'm going to take action and just set aside all fear, maybe be a little bit outrageous. Obviously, we've got to do that within like our own personality, otherwise it lacks authenticity. But I guess that's where I'm coming from. What's your advice to people to kind of embrace their own personality and set aside some fear and try to take some action on those things that perhaps they've got ideas around, but maybe afraid of what somebody else will think or whatever it might be?
Well, here's 3 questions that people can ask themselves to help them maybe define their own world's best statement, because the background and the story of how this came about might be better served for another day, Jürgen, but the impact that it's had in my own life in terms of me connecting with people and being introduced to them and them saying, oh, hey, Laban, nice to meet you. What do you do? And my response is I'm the world's best courage coach. And 99.9% of them go, wow, what does that look like? And then I say, well, I teach people how to take bold, massive, and courageous action so that they can facilitate their own miraculous outcomes. And I do that by being a speaker, a coach, an author, a podcaster, and insert your things here, and particularly entrepreneurs in this space where we wear so many different hats. If you're listening to this and you're like, how dare he make that kind of declaration? Well, here's one that you can make. So answer these 3 questions, right? What am I the best in the world at, or world class at, that other people find really challenging? What am I the best in the world at, or world class at, that other people find very challenging? It might be crocheting. It might be springboard diving. It might be dancing. It might be motorbike riding, whatever your thing is, right? Second question is, what do people constantly ask me for advice on? What do people constantly ask me for advice on? And then the third question is, what is the job that you would do if you had all the money in the world and would completely light your soul on fire? And if you and most people won't be able to answer those straight away. It takes some meditation and some thoughts. There's a plane going by. I don't know if you can hear that. What if you're a pilot, right?
Yeah.
So take the time to really ruminate on those questions and just pay attention to what the universe is saying. And then forge that into this next parameter, Jürgen. So the declaration of making a world's best statement has to fall under a couple of categories to be impactful and to be sincere. And it has to be a non-quantifiable statement. Non-quantifiable, all right? And until they have a world's best courage coach convention where they name a winner out of Las Vegas, Nevada next year, right? Which that's not planned, that's just made up in my head, right? Until they do that, no one can really take that declaration away from me. So it's non-quantifiable and it's intangible. So you have to, like, if you were to say to me, Laban, I'm the world's best chess player, unless you had won and we're the grand champion, what do they call them? The Grand Master.
Yeah.
Unless you'd actually won that accolade, you couldn't make that declaration. But if you find something, try and keep it short, like, and with whatever you're doing. And some examples have been, we had Les Brown join our mastermind last year. And I said, Les, what's your world's best statement? He said, I'm the world's best transformational speaker. Now, he's about the only person on planet Earth that can do that, right? Because that's what he is. And think about what it would be, because no Olympic gold medalist ever visualized coming third, right? They never visualized that. And I know because I've interviewed one who won 2 golds over 2 separate Olympics. Have fun with this. We get one crack at this iteration on Earth, Jürgen. Les Brown says, what people think of us is none of our spiritual business. If you're worried about what people are going to think of you, it's going to cripple the exponential growth. And why I share this with you is that the impact that statement of world's best courage coach has had at the people at the top, and I'm talking about the people that are the most successful across health, wealth, and relationships, high integrity people. There's lots of really famous, wealthy people that are idiots, but there's some incredible people out there that come from a place of service. And these are the people that resonate with this declaration the most. All right. And then once you start playing at that level, you can literally achieve anything. And that's the lesson here. For those that this resonates with, and there'll be a lot of imposter syndrome. And when you first say it out loud, say it to your spouse, they might laugh and scoff in your face, and maybe reassess your relationship if that's the response. But have some fun with it. And when you get it right, it will resonate deeply with you. Practice saying it with whatever you do, right? Whatever profession or whatever you are. And the example I'll give you was that my wife took the declaration of being the world's best life optimization coach. And that's evolved for her now. So that one's available. But the beauty is there can be 10 world's best courage coaches because it's a non-quantifiable and intangible statement.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the follow-up is the key, because that's kind of the hook that gets people interested. And then they can find out, well, how does that play out? What exactly is that? And so then when you talk about the coaching, the speaking, what the other things you mentioned. So depending on what resonates with the person you're talking to, they might say, oh, we want you to come and speak, or we'd like to get copies of your book for all of our executives, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, most people comprehend life at a 2nd or 3rd grade level, as I learned, right? Which makes a lot of sense with a lot of stuff. And I don't know what age that is in Australia now. It must be I think it's 8 or 9 years of age. And you can fact check this stuff, right? It's there or thereabouts. A lot of people are very good in sort of 1 or 2 different areas. So what it does is it allows people to have clarity about what you do. Because if you say, oh, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm an author and I run masterminds and I've got this thing, and then it's for people outside of that spectrum, it's too overwhelming in my own experience. And you're being gentle enough for them to go, I get it. And then typically that invites more conversation. Well, tell me, I've often wondered about what being a coach would be like. And then these things can actually lead into they do lead into business opportunities. Yeah. That's not the reason you're doing it, but that's a beautiful byproduct of the very high levels of service that you're offering.
Well, if somebody asks you, what is it that you do, they're wanting to find out, and is there a conversation here that might lead to business? So, I mean, that's somewhere in the back of their mind. And usually if you say, well, I'm a business owner and I do this, that, and the other, and then they zone out. Whereas if you capture their attention up front and then it leads to a meaningful conversation, that's actually where we come from the point of view of human marketing. Everything starts with a conversation, and a meaningful conversation where you get to know one another and you say, okay, this person I don't relate to, so that's fine. Part ways, all good. This person I do relate to, there's a bit of a momentum building up here for a relationship that may lead to business down the track, or a joint venture, or whatever it might be, or a referral to somebody else who needs my help.
And I don't need to have watched every single 500 episodes that you've done, Jurgen. There's a 600 now, I forget, to know that the conversation piece around when you try to serve everyone, you serve no one's come up, right? And by making a statement like that, the people that do not resonate with me are immediately polarized away. So you all of a sudden you don't have to spend any time guessing about right. And that's a huge gift. Think of all the time you'd save if you don't bring the wrong people into your life. And the people that it does resonate with think it's the greatest thing they've ever heard. And we've when I say we, I've personally been involved with, I think, about 75 creations of world best statements with people all over the world. And it's been a hell of a journey. So I would encourage everyone to seriously consider it. If it resonates with you, if it doesn't, then that's cool. But the next time you meet someone and they go, I'm a lawyer, the only obvious next, well, what area do you specialize in?
Yeah.
And no disrespect to lawyers, it's boring, right? It's boring for me, unless I need a divorce attorney, which I don't. So I don't know. Have fun with it, is all I'd say.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, we've kind of circled around this whole idea of overcoming doubts and self-talk and developing this world's best statement and how you might go around that. One of the other areas I did want to explore, and coming back to your journey that you talked about early on, you're very open, particularly in the book, you're very open about the mistakes you've made and very transparent. And you say that this is a way for me to take back power over those mistakes. So talk to us a little bit about that, because like even for anyone that hasn't had sort of the trauma that perhaps you've gone through, we all have some form of trauma. It might just be I stubbed my toe this morning on the step and then I tripped and spilt my drink. And I could feel sorry for myself all day for that, which is essentially giving away my power. Or I could just laugh at myself for being a bit clumsy, being a bit of a klutz, and then just move on, in which case I take back power. So what's your kind of strategy for not taking ourselves so seriously, not falling into that trap of ceding power to whatever's happened to us, but to actually own our mistakes and take back power?
For a long time, Jurgen, I blamed everyone else for my life, especially my mum and dad. And what I came to learn, it was that my mum and dad grew up in unbelievably challenging, dysfunctional homes. My father was a child of a loveless marriage and parents that should have divorced. My mother grew up in a horribly toxic, alcoholic, abusive family. And mum and dad, despite their best efforts, were doing the best they could with the tools they had available to them. And given how I'm turning out, you could argue that they did a hell of a job, right? And when I realized that I had to take ownership of my own experience, and I was learning and reading, and I've read 550 odd books in the last 5 years, Jurgen. Like none of them are Harry Potter or anything. Like they're all professional development, apart from a few modern day parables like The Alchemist and the Go-Giver book series, right?
Yeah.
So you learn a thing or two when you read that much. And I learned about the power of forgiveness, self-forgiveness, forgiveness for others, and how impactful that is, right? And I interviewed a guy on my show, Dr. Fred Luskin, who founded the Stanford Forgiveness Project, who was responsible for reconnecting people that had been blown up in the IRA in Ireland, and the mother of the deceased children forgave the soldier that set the bomb, and Auschwitz camp survivors that forgave the commander. Like, it's fascinating. I figured if people could do that, then I could forgive mum and dad for what they did to me. And when I did that, Jürgen, I realized that I reclaimed all the ownership and the power of everything. The reason that I am so transparent in the book is because, like what I said earlier, what people think of me is none of my spiritual business. I've even laughed about the possibility of me running for government, prime minister or president, whatever, and them trying to dig up all the dirt on me, but it's already out.
Here,
So, right,
read the book.
Right, so read the book, and that is a very liberating place to be. And like I said earlier, I'm still a deeply flawed individual who makes plenty of errors and mistakes, but I'm very quick to take ownership of them. There's no blame gaming anymore. And the moment that you reclaim that, you can use that as your new superpower. So I can come on a podcast or an interview or be in a book and share unabashed. And because of how I show up, and I know this from feedback from people that have heard and listened to me and other mentors of mine, is that it makes them go, actually, his experience was way worse than what I went through, or even if it was not as bad, it's like, if he can open up about that, then so can I. And to demonstrate the power of what I'm talking about, my wife and I have just celebrated our first wedding anniversary. We've been together 5 years on August 26th, 2023, which is incidentally the anniversary of me giving up alcohol. And we met afterwards, which is pretty cool. But a year into our relationship, if I could share something really personal with you, with Jürgen and the audience, my wife, who's from Russia, we've at this point collectively had 18 consecutive miscarriages, right? 3 of those are ectopic pregnancies, which, for those who don't know, it means that it grows in the fallopian tube, and it's very dangerous. One nearly killed her in 2019. But a year into our relationship, she opened up to me about some systemic childhood abuse she experienced from a stepfather, which resulted in 2 pregnancies when she was 15 and 16, and 2 illegal abortions, that one of which damaged her uterine wall. And that has been the catalyst for these miscarriages. And I don't share this for sympathy. I share this for knowledge and for inspiration, because if you meet my wife, Jürgen, I might be the world's best courage coach, but she is easily the most courageous person I've ever met. And so because she opened up for the first time in her life to me, we're able to start this healing journey. And in that process, she took the time to forgive her stepfather, can you believe? She forgave her mother for not protecting. She forgave her biological father for abandoning her. And by doing that, she dropped the hot coal of hatred that we hold on to when you are experiencing and it's occupying your brain, thinking about how much hurt and damage you want to do to those people. And it also created an opportunity for us to figure out a way to get to the root cause of this. Her and I want nothing more than to have a family. And so if the universe allows us to be able to create that, what a comeback story. 18 miscarriages, right? Like, it's a record in most hospitals in Australia. And I think the world record's like 27 from some poor woman that had an autoimmune disease, but it's an extraordinary number. And so when people who are hearing this that might have had one miscarriage, that are in the depths of depression, if you're out there today, know that you're not alone. Know that you can use that experience as your new fuel source. And that is why I'm more than happy, and with my wife's permission, because she's got her own podcast, she talks about this stuff all the time, called Happy on the Inside.
Yeah.
It like, I don't need to keep anything in anymore. And some people might say, oh, you're oversharing. I don't hear anything from those people anymore, Jürgen, because they're only projecting the fact that they've got plenty of stuff in here and in here that they're dealing with. And there's no judgment. There's no judgment from my end. But I tell you, the more you talk about it, the easier it gets to talk about, and the more healing that both Anna and I have done. And that is the beauty of it. That's the power of what you're asking, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's very powerful stuff. Very powerful stuff. All right. Now, we haven't even gotten on to talking about your interest in ultra marathon running and the lessons you've had from that. But I think I'm just aware of the time. So I think it's a good point. Now to move on to the buzz, our innovation round. And it's the same 5 questions I ask of every guest, the snappy short answers that inspire inspiration. And not that you've already given us a lot to do to actions to inspire us forward. But here's some more. You ready?
Shoot, Strauss.
Right. What's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Eat more steak.
Yes, I forgot that you're also a diet fanatic for raw steaks, right? Is it raw or?
No, most of it's cooked, but I have eaten a few raw things, and that might sound like a half joking response, but I'm serious. The catalyst for a lot of my creativity and my healing journey has been incorporating a lot more animal-based products into my diet. So you can do more digging in the background for that for other people that are interested.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll leave that for another time. But yes, there's a whole conversation around diet there. All right. Now, what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
Remain open to the fact that I don't know everything and be a lifelong student, I think.
And you mentioned that you read over 500 books in the last 5 years. That's a pretty intense reading regime. So there's a lot to learn there.
Lockdown helps.
All right. So I might have just answered that question. What's one of the favorite resources you use most often?
Conversations with real life people. Podcasts are close second, and books and podcasts are a close second and third. But having conversations with people and being open to learning new ideas has been the single greatest thing I've ever done.
Well, we haven't talked about your podcast. So you've got a podcast where you've interviewed some pretty amazing guests, and I'm guessing that those are conversations that you include in that list of conversations.
Absolutely, Jürgen. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now, what's the best way to keep a client on track?
This is just my humble opinion. All right. Make sure you charge enough where that they will show up to the scheduled meetings and that they pay attention to the feedback that they are eliciting from you. And don't be afraid to fire them if they are not compliant based on what you've agreed with them.
Yeah. Yes, that comes back. That's an interesting comment, but it does come back to what we were saying earlier about the people who resonate with our message. They're a good fit. The people that, if we're not clear on our message and somebody who's not a good fit resonates with that creates a lot of pain on both sides, right?
They have to be in enough pain to do something about it to get the best outcomes I'm talking about. And I'm referencing more from a one-on-one coaching side of things. And the more they pay, the more they pay attention. And don't be afraid to just be honest with them. If they don't like it, you save yourself a lot of pain and heartache. And it goes back to the people that want help. No one's going to spend $100,000 a year coaching with you if they're not ready. If they're not ready to do the work. And
of course, coming from a place of service. So it's not just giving them nasty feedback for the sake of it.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's all part of, if you're okay, if I elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
There's an accountability when you enter in a coaching agreement with someone in the way that I choose to operate, is that, and I reference Avatar, when the animal, the dragon thing connects with the hare. You know, if anyone remembers the movie, they connect and they're kind of energetically connected to this being and this beast. That's what I share with my coaching clients. So you and I will energetically be connected throughout this journey together. And I will be giving you everything that I have in my weaponry to serve you at the highest level. And if you're not able to show up and respect that commitment, and this is at the very beginning of the enrollment conversation. If they agree to that and then they tend to deviate, then it's on them. so far, I haven't had to do that because of the upfront, honest, real conversation. And if they don't resonate with that kind of experience, then they won't sign on and won't send you any money. Yeah. So it's perfect.
Yeah. So being really clear up front and actually not having the mindset of you've got to bring everybody on. So if you resonate with that, then we're on board and it's probably going to work out for the best. All right. What's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves? I think you might have answered this already.
Well, it's funny, it's an interesting question. Two of the guys that I've had on my show, Shep Hyken and Scott McCain, go and check these guys out. They are customer experience experts, and they fly all around the world and are paid multiple 5 figures to speak at corporate events. And they talk about, one of Scott McCain's books is called Distinction. And read that book, because I believe that I've organically become very distinctive because I'm trying to level up all the time, and which is more than what most people do based on the experience that I've had. I'm talking to everyone on the planet. There's a lot of people get stuck in their rut and they're doing their thing. And again, there's zero judgment for that. But to become distinctive, I think operating in alignment with your true gifts, and even if you're not religious or spiritual, like, at least be open-minded to the fact that whoever created us, right, wherever we came from, all gave us these incredible gifts. And we've all been given different gifts, because if we're all given the same gift, it'd be completely redundant, right? Right? There's incredible people that I meet all the time that are even really successful in other areas of their life that haven't leaned into their true purpose. When you do that, Jürgen, you'll never work another day again in your life. I'm not saying it won't be hard at times, but you operate at a place where you 10x the amount of actual work that you do versus working in a job. And the example would give, I worked in IT recruitment for 14 years, which I, in hindsight, absolutely despised, even though I was okay and mediocre at times and sometimes flashes of brilliance. But it was completely out of alignment. My life was a slog. Now I'm doing what I love, right, with whatever that is for you. And answering those 3 questions that I gave earlier will help you move towards that, by the way. Like, then it becomes effortless in many ways. And then you'll be energetically aligned to people that are on the same pathway, and they will continue to lift you up as well. So there's my encouragement.
Excellent. Wonderful answer. All right. Well, thanks for getting us through the buzz, and thanks for the conversation so far. This has been fantastic, and we've touched on a couple of subjects that we haven't even scratched the surface of, let alone dug deeper. So I think there might be a few additional podcast episodes that we could come out of here. But for now,
Jürgen, before I can interrupt you real quick, right? For those people that have been listening to Jürgen's show for a while, or this is your first time, here's my request to you. When you finish listening to this, go and find a place to rate and review this podcast. Be honest and share it with someone you care about. The way that podcasting works, it's driven by being shared organically and the algorithmic way of reviews. If the system can tell it's being listened to, it will put it out to more people, and organically people can come and find this that aren't connected to your networks. That's my encouragement to you. Jürgen has busted his hump. He's doing it, right?
Yeah.
And he's putting himself out there and connecting with some incredible people. And that's my encouragement to you. And the law of reciprocity will figure out a way to reward that action many, many times over.
Yeah. Well, I like to say that sharing it with somebody you care about, you're actually doing them a favor, because there's so much value in the conversation. So thanks for that, Laban. I appreciate that. And I come back to what you said earlier. I don't feel as though I've worked a day in my life since I started the podcast. I just love doing it. All right. Well, where can people find out more about you and maybe even reach out and say thanks for what you shared today?
Well, Laban Ditchburn is the rarest combination of those 2 names on planet Earth. So if you can't find me, you're not looking hard enough. I do have a really amazing free video training if you go to podcastingheroes.com. And that will give you some insights for those that have shows or are interested about starting a podcast. It'll give you some insights about how to actually create a magnificent show all without having a big audience. And that's at podcastingheroes.com. But otherwise, just punch me into the internet and you'll find me.
Yep, excellent. Well, we'll link to the Podcasting Heroes site, and we'll link to your website as well in the show notes. So thanks so much for sharing your insights and wisdom so generously today. Thanks for being so open and transparent and digging into some personal stories as well. I've really enjoyed our conversation. And as I said, there's probably a heap of additional episodes where we could talk about diet, we could talk about mindset, we could talk about podcasting. They were just a few that sort of I can recollect now. So all the best for the future, and let's stay in touch.
Good on you, Jürgen. You're doing a fantastic job, brother. I really appreciate your time and the audience's time today.
Thanks, Laban.